For this week's meditation, I invite you to hear the story of Gifford Pinchot and to not hear it just from your mind, but from your heart and from your own history of how his story is our story. Gifford Pinchot was part of Teddy Roosevelt's administration, and he was known for having traveled widely around the world, and he also had a strong background in academia. Teddy commissioned him to essentially figure out what to do with all of the natural resources across the United States at that time. And he wanted a sweeping and comprehensive policy and plan that would somehow work with so many different industries to actually preserve and conserve our natural resources. Gifford was both flattered and overwhelmed by this task. And so he spent a lot of time thinking through all of the strategies and angles that he could propose to Teddy Roosevelt. And as he thought and thought, he became more and more overwhelmed, to the point where he actually started to drop into a bit of a depression. He was feeling very despondent. And so one day he went out and he took a ride on his favorite horse, Jim, through Rock Creek Park. And as he rode, his shoulders slumped, and he felt the weight of responsibility of what he needed to produce for Teddy Roosevelt. As he rode, he described starting to see a very dark and deep tunnel. And he surmised that he was seeing this tunnel that looked like it was going nowhere because he was so depressed. He began to follow the tunnel as he saw it in his mind's eye. And as he followed the tunnel, he surmised that at the end of it, he would just sort of drop into an abyss. But what happened was very different. As he entered the end of the tunnel, it opened, and what he began to see was one of those exceptional, extraordinary, expanded events. What he saw were these landscapes in India from his travels. These landscapes that he hadn't been thinking about, but they actually just flooded forward and came up into his awareness. And as he started to look at those landscapes, a thought came through, an awareness came out of seemingly nowhere, that there were conservation projects in India at the time, that there were lands that were set aside for conservation, and he had completely forgotten about it. From that vision, he actually went back and he developed a conservation plan, part of which included the national park system that we know today. From that experience, he was able to produce and give Teddy Roosevelt such a comprehensive policy that the story goes that Teddy jumped out of his chair and yelled, "Yes," aloud. From this story, it's easy to sort of pull together a variety of strands and perhaps even notice where what we would say on one hand is something that would be depressed and despondent, something we don't want. But on the other hand, there was this extraordinary, expanded event that came both one and the same. Our minds don't do well at holding something that can seem so paradoxical together all at once, for how can the two go together? And yet part of expanded events are that they often come from circumstances, experiences, even very ordinary moments that we would say, how can this be the place, the experience that something so expanded could come from? And that is what makes it almost a miracle. As you reflect on this week's story, perhaps look back on your own life or your current present experiences, ones that you would say are unwelcome, unwanted. Perhaps they don't seem like they're going anywhere, and notice perhaps how they're leading you into something that could be just a bit more expansive. The mind will tell you that it's not possible. However, when we begin to follow both the soulful awareness within and also our own inner sense of being led and guided, we may discover that there's something new that comes forward, what we didn't expect. For exceptional, expanded events in our lives are actually more ordinary and commonplace than we could ever dream of. They're happening every single day. It's just that our mind sort of brushes them away. In our story from today, it may have been easy for Gifford to simply say, that image that I saw from India is nothing. Why did it come forward? It has no purpose or meaning or value, and it has nothing to serve me. These are often the responses of the qualifying mind, but the soulful state within us knows very differently. It knows that there is something that is being born, even in moments that are really difficult, and that there's something that always wants to break through. When we have the courage and the eyes to see it, when we say yes to the light that is persistent in breaking through and delivering to us exactly what we most need.